Maybe I'll start by telling a little story. This house was built in 1881, or completed in 1801, after 3 years of construction. And on the construction crew, 116 people for 3 years. That's what it took to build this house. And out of the 116 people, we know 112 of them were born in Europe or North Africa. So, and the other 4 that were listed in the records had no fixed address, so we don't know where they were from. So basically, when you look at it, this is not an American-built house. And the key here was Americans in 1880s had the money. So people would come to this house and they would look at electric lamps. And this is like in our streetcar business. People would ride our cars, not to go from one place to another, so they could see electric lights at nighttime on the cars. So, and then machinery came in. Like this house, in the beginning, has central heat. It has a steam boiler in the basement. Actually, we have now steam boiler number 6. It was central heat. This house is heated by steam. It had electricity. It had over 1,000 feet of lead pipe in it, bringing water, hot and cold water lines to every room in the house if they need. And a lot of them were never used; they were capped. But if they ever needed them, it was there. So you had hot water, you had cold water, you had 6 bathrooms, you had central heat, you had air conditioning. This is the first house in the United States to have air conditioning. Some of the wooden ducts are still in there. That's why they had to order electricity for it, because it needed the machinery to pump the air around the house. And they had huge motors in the basement to do this. And what the machinery was, they had chutes that the ice blocks were sent down in bales of hay, and then the machinery would and there were Sylvie motors, and they had all the gold leaf on them and everything, designs on them. And these would operate and circulate the air around the house. Then in the attic, they had a plenum box, and above and inside the plenum box was 2 huge radiators. And then above the planet box was a 14-inch diameter stack that went up to the roof. That means, and then all of these registers up on the ceiling of the house had ducts going into that box. So what happened was, in the nighttime, the steam plant would go on and heat those huge radiators in the plenum box, and all that heat would go up through the stack out on the roof. And then it would cause a vacuum in there, and that would pull the old air out of the house. So they could have all the fireplaces going and the gas lights burning in the house and never open a window. So this was industry. And, you know, brilliant minds who were very, very mechanically inclined. You'll see elements in this house that you will see in the Wyatt-Tootle, right? Right. You know, wood, maybe a cabinet.
On the outside.
On the outside, you definitely see it. It has that, you know, beginning of an Italianate home, and then ended up being a combination of things. But you definitely see that. There's a lot of theories on what this house should be called. If it should be called Italianate, if it should be called Gothic, if it should be called Renaissance or Romanesque, Islamic, Arabesque. All those names are brought up. To be correct, I would say it's the combination of all those places. And I think some of the workers in the house figured it out, and they refer to the house as Alcantara, which is an Arab word for bridge. This part of the world probably was the most, architecturally speaking, one of the most exciting periods of history itself. There was nothing before like it, and there will be nothing after it. So it's a unique thing. And it's sometimes I feel badly when I see that it's neglected and is considered, well, these cities are tearing down all the great stuff, and it's a loss not only to buildings, but to people and culture. Then what happened is, at a point 20 some odd years ago, my family said to me, Rob, would you consider to go back to St. Joe and take the family house before it goes into the hands of the wrong people? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And then my 3 sons got involved with it, and I had no choice anyway, because that meant they would have a big house, they'd have the grounds, they would have a bedroom of their own, a bathroom of their own, and they went for it, and so it worked out very well. I'll give you an example. When you do house restoration, you don't go to local hardware stores and buy materials. You don't buy reproductions and put it in the house. An example here why this house has had more motion pictures filmed in it than any other house in the county here. For the one reason, the gas lights. These work. And in the motion pictures, when they use them, it adds something to it. When they go around, and I've seen on a monitor, sort of like the romance of the house with the gas lights burning. And people today, I think, are bored and upset with reproductions, and I think the younger people today really want the genuine things. And so much has been lost, and that means the link of younger people to learn culture was severed, was absolutely severed. You can read 20 books on pain, but if you haven't felt it, do you really know what pain is? And this is what I'm applying to. You could read 20 books on historic buildings in America, but when they're gone, do you really know what they are? Now to focus on actually not only the beginning of the house, but the thought of building this house was my cousin Adam Schuster. Adam Schuster was a very interesting man. He was a young man. He was born in West Prussia, which was would be part of Germany today. It was owned by the Prussian crown instead of owned by a local crown. So he became an orphan at a very young age, and when that happens in Germany at the time, children were put in orphanages, and whatever took place. But his father had one brother in Savannah, Gustav Schuster, and he owned the General Mercantile Store in Savannah, just a few miles north of here. And they made contact with him, and they said, we have your nephew. Would you be interested in taking him? And he said, absolutely, send him to me. So Adam arrived, and I think he arrived with 3 Deutschmarks in his pocket, which today would be about 75 cents. That's all he had in life. But he had a brilliant German ironclad mind that was incredible. So Adam came here. He worked for his uncle, I guess, 10 hours a day plus. And he worked and worked and worked, And I think he worked harder than his uncle's own kids. Okay, so what happened was when he's about roughly 18 years old, his uncle takes him in business with him. Okay, and Adam is working 7 days a week. And then his uncle, I guess, gives him the business, the shop. And Adam has this great idea, which he had in Germany, chain stores. So Adam when he was a very young man, maybe roughly in his 20s, start buying shops all over, and he came to St. Joe and he bought 3 shops, and then he went across the river and he bought a few shops. Okay, he's in the mid-20s, owns about 20 shops. And his theory was this: without lowering the quality of the materials in my shops, I can buy car loads, boat loads, and undersell people, my competitors. So what happened is you'd buy a whole car loads, and box cars in those days were 80 feet long and 12 feet high and 9 feet wide. They had a lot of merchandise, and he would buy the entire car of merchandise, or he would buy the boat loads. So what happened is he had the lowest price. This is like all these shops now, food shops, okay? They're rated at the lowest prices in the state, and going back a century ago, well, Adam Schuster was the lowest price in dry goods. He and Levi Strauss, who's better known today as Levi Strauss, both were born in Germany. Both came to America independently. One went to the West Coast, one went here in the Midwest. And they both start manufacturing jeans. And the theory behind that, Schuster's theory was, because he was a fantastic businessman, when people have money or they don't have money, they will still buy work clothes. It's logic. He had a beautiful sense for logic. So he started manufacturing jeans. And I understand today it became Lee's and then Wrangler jeans, so it's still going big force. So that's what he did. And then what happened, it was interesting, Levi Strauss later on got the idea, or his workers got the idea, to put the copper rivets in to fortify the strength of jeans. And Schuster was scratching his head, maybe right in this very room, and say, is that going to take business away from me? So what he did is he put the straps on, sewed them in back. They came over, put the buttons in front and a little bib in front onto the jeans. And what he had done is created the overalls, okay? And he made, I think, 500 pairs. And he went to the Kansas State Fair. And the farmers tried them out and loved them. All 500 were sold with orders for more. So this is where wealth came in: ideas, logic. And this is how the money rolled in. And then how he got his U.S. citizenship, he went into the U.S. Army because he only had Prussian citizenship. And he went into the U.S. Army, he got his citizenship, and he also came out as a colonel. And I think the unique thing was here, he was a big guy. He was 6'2" or 3", somewhere around there, about 200 pounds, muscular, had a full beard, and just looked stern. So I think, when he was in the Army, people obeyed him up there, okay? He joined the Republican Party. And he worked very hard in the Republican Party. And as he put his, keen logic into business, he put keen logic into the Republican Party. and within a short period of time he became chairman of Missouri State Republican Party, which is another accomplishment. Now, getting back to business, Schuster came up with new ideas, about manufacturing things, and he would manufacture general merchandise here in St. Joe and stock his stores. And then he wanted to do more business, and the Americans were always a little prejudiced against people that weren't born locally. I think this is the British input in them. And so what he did is there were a few banks that weren't favoring him, and he had these wonderful ideas. So he did what only a tough German could do, buy them out. So he went on this campaign of buying local banks out. And I think he had 3 banks here in Missouri, had that in Kansas. He had another 4 banks. And then he used that capital to advance businesses. Then I think he went into the food service. And this was unique, another whole different thing. So he bought cattle ranches and to start developing beef. And then he got involved with the railroads that came out with the refrigeration cars. And this meant that you can send beef all over the country because you had refrigeration. So he capitalized on it. He got involved with the railroads. And at this point, New York City rarely had beef because they had no refrigeration. Send it there, and they didn't raise it there. So they were basically on pork. Well, what happened is, within a few years, hundreds of refrigeration cars were going from New York, from the Midwest, delivering beef to New York City. And then that was the development of all the famous restaurants in New York City, because they had beef and they had fresh meat. He spoke several languages, and that's what did well. And remember, a century ago, I don't know if German or English was the most spoken language in St. Joseph, because the one thing is the Germans spoke German, the Swiss spoke German that were here, the Austrians spoke German, the Sephardic, and not the Sephardic Jews, but the Reformed Jews from Germany spoke German. So you had a good portion of the population speaking German. Even when I came here, there was a German high school. There were German schools here. And when I walked around town, it was, people would look at me and say, "Auf Deutsch bitte, let's speak German." And then I would speak German to them. And that's all practically disappeared, And so you have this tremendous German-speaking population here. And you had it in other cities, too. In the 1880s, Schuster's life was at its peak, absolutely a peak. He was industrial. He was a hard worker. He was a brilliant man. He was blessed with a brilliant IQ. Schuster his daily actions would be get up early in the morning, go out, do all these business, make contacts, help people do this, go from one business to the other. Then he would come home. In the evening, they would have big dinners here, big parties, and so forth like that. Then after 12 midnight, he would come and he would sit in this room for about 3 hours, like I do, and get all the thoughts in life, what to do, how to do it. He would plan his next day in his mind, so when he got up and went out, the following morning he knew what to do. That was an itinerary. And I think this was the height. He was in the prime of life. He was healthy. He was brilliant. He was married. He had 3 children and owned maybe 40 or 50 businesses. Was a colonel. Was a chairman of the Republican Party. was a person that people would come from all over the country to meet to try to get ideas. It was a nonstop. The 1880s for Schuster was nonstop. I don't know, sometimes I question how could one man do it, but he did it because he had the will to do it. And of course he built this house. I refer to Adam as the merchant prince, and someday if I ever get enough time and energy, I will write a book called The Merchant Prince and really try to get all and more details on Schusters Life, and I think it would be a very, very interesting thing. But here is a person that had an impact on America and was not born in America. But then that wasn't impossible, because when I look at Adam's, all of his friends, like Nikola Tesla, who was a guest in this house many times. He was an Austrian citizen born in Serbia, but look what he did in coming to the United States. He gave the Americans, he built the first American powerhouse here, Niagara Falls, which was hydroelectricity. He invented alternating current. That means you can transmit it. But Tesla had this dream, if I build Niagara Falls, I can go hundreds and hundreds of miles with the electricity, or even 1,000, and supply it to locations that don't have electricity. So Tesla did. Yeah, Tesla, Adam were buddies. And and then, of course, Tesla got involved with George Westinghouse Jr. I don't know if it was an introduction between Adam and George Westinghouse Jr. came here. He actually did the festooning on the second floor, all the lamps in the ceiling. So and that's why I don't want to alter the electric in this house. I may add to it, but not take out what George Westinghouse Jr. put here. Oscar Wilde came here, and Oscar Wilde, 1882, was, just an outstanding, brilliant person. And he lectured here for, it's over and over, for days in a row. He brought the crowds in. When he came here, he had, and he looked in the house, but I understand here the desk was the desk upstairs that he wrote the famous letter, The Death of Jesse James. And in that letter, it's really a question. Do the Americans have their heroes as peaceful men or, gangsters? He goes to see Jesse James' house. The only thing left was a boot scraper at the front door. Everything was taken out of the house for souvenirs. And then he's there making notes of the letter he's going to write, and then they come back. Some guy comes back with the tools and smashes the concrete and takes the thing, and he puts that in there. And here, when he came for dinner one night, he walked into the dining room, and he saw the whole cabinets and tables just chucked with an abundance of food and goodies. And he looked in the room, and he paused for a moment, and he took a deep breath, and he says, the only way to resist temptation is to indulge in it. And when you think of it, people like Schuster, like Tesla, really, and Carnegie, who did the steel in America, really, really helped America become a strong country. And when you look back on it, without these people, it may never have happened. This house, every week there was an event here for somebody, and sometimes he would have 100 people in the house, and it would just be open. The gardens would be open. The gardens were very, very formal. All of the sculpture, all of the bronze are all gone. The fountains are gone. I'm glad I'm my age. I was born in the Great Depression, which I don't think was any harder, or maybe it wasn't as hard as conditions are today. I'm more than satisfied having the ability and the right time and right place to go in America, go through the major cities, go to all these tremendous houses that were built that are no longer here. I'm glad I'm old, because being old gave me the opportunity of going around during the Depression and visiting these houses. It's amazing what America had, and it's sad when you think of its losses. That means here on Hall Street there's 11 houses. 25 years ago there was 52 houses in the Hall Street district. Then I quote Queen Victoria. Okay, very interesting. When Victoria once said, "I don't care what people think of me. The only thing important in my life is what I think of them." And I think she handled it very, very well. So, by the way, Adam was German speaking, Victoria was German speaking. When he visits Victoria, it was through Victoria's help that he got designs for this house and got architects, which is unique. 2 German architects did the final design of this building. One was born in the United States of German parents, and one came from Germany. And then on top of that, they had a Scottish contractor to build. And this is how the building was put together. There again, you know, as it's the combination of things, as the worker says, Alcantara. This is a Feng Shui house. They actually incorporated Chinese school of Feng Shui in this house. When you look outside and you see the grand staircase, it does not face the front door. You see how they put the columns there, and they put it aside and made that portion of the reception hall larger, so the bottom of the staircase would not face the front door. Then you look in that room and look in this room, and these 2 mirrors are set, you know, opposite of each other. And when you look in the mirror, you see Feng Shui, you see infinity. That is a Chinese school and in the house. Then on the fireplaces, I have the covers to put there in the summer, and they're mirrored, so the energies reflect back in the room. So you have all this thing. Then you have to have a balance in Feng Shui of the 5 elements. And that's why, should you remove the gas lights in the house and the fireplaces, it won't exist. It won't work, because you're taking one of the 5 elements out. And in Chinese school of thought, you need a balance. Many articles about this house being haunted. It's you know, how these articles were formed, I really don't know, but they do exist. I think I won't argue the point and say there's no attachments in the house. I think there is. But I have no problem with that. But I think one of the unique attachments is the style of the house. And I'll put it in this way, I'll summarize it. We build and create environments. And then the environments that we create the younger people that will enter them and grow up in them. And I think this is very true. Environmental energies. So this is very true of the house. This house is an extraordinary house because it's filled with energies, tremendous energies. And everyone coming into this house leaves in a happier state. And the tranquility of the house, when you are in this house, all throughout the house there's wood. Beautiful wood, and it's from all places of the world. Every room was probably from a different country, and it was imported here to build and create these rooms. But when you're looking at wood, and you're looking at tile, and you're looking at marble, and you're looking at granite, you're looking at nature. And when you're in a modern day building that's glass-clad, plastic inside, cheap metal. What do you really get? And is this affecting younger people of today and people that are going to be born and thrown into this world? Where is the culture? Where is the energies? And this is something I worry about. When you're at nighttime and you light the gas lights and you light the fireplaces, the tranquility of the beautiful glow of the lamps, you're at rest. And even if you had a hard day, and I have hard days too, and I come here and I light the gas lights. As I say, I'd always rather strike a match and light a gas jet than curse the darkness. But in any event, the house becomes super mellow, and I can be, retired from a very tumultuous day and then come back into this house and enjoy nature at its finest, design at its finest, and all the what the Chinese claimed about Feng Shui and the burning of the gas lights. It makes just a restful environment. But the living museum, which I refer to this house being absolutely a living museum, it has everything that most museums have. But only it's a home. It's a home that's untouched throughout the century. And I think this is where you not only see something and see a century or two before, but you live it. And there's a big difference here. And an absolutely big difference.